Episode 92.
The ones with any sense were keeping out of Gilgamesh's way, hiding out in caves round the gully just like we were. So we decided we'd go poking round the caves by night and see if we couldn't persuade a few of them.
You went poking around dark caves looking for giants? Said Ron with odd respect in his voice.
Well, it wasn't the giants who worried us most, said Hagrid. We were more concerned about the Death Eaters. Dumbledore had told us before we went not to tangle with them if we could avoid it, and the trouble was they knew we was around. Spec Gilgameth told him about us. At night, when the giants were sleeping and we wanted to be creeping into their caves, McNair and the other were sneaking round the mountains looking for us. It was hard put to stop a Limpy jumping out at them, said Hagrid, the corners of his mouth lifting his wild beard. She was raring to attack 'em. She's something when she's roused, a Limpy. Fiery, you know. Spec it's the French in her.
Hagrid gazed misty-eyed into the fire. Harry allowed him 30 seconds reminiscence before clearing his throat loudly. So, what happened? Did you ever get near any of the other giants?
What? Oh, yeah, we did. Yeah, on the third night after Carcass was killed, we crept out of the cave we'd been hiding in and headed back down into the gully, keeping our eyes skinned for the Death Eaters. Got inside a few of the caves. No go. Then, in about the sixth one, we found 3 giants hiding.
Cave must have been cramped, said Ron.
Wasn't room to swing a needle, said Hagrid.
Didn't they attack you when they saw you?
Asked Hermione. Probably would have done if they'd been in any condition, said Hagrid. But they was badly hurt, all 3 of them. Gilgamesh's lot had beaten them unconscious. They'd woken up and crawled into the nearest shelter they could find. Anyway, one of them had a bit of English and he translated for the others, and what we had to say didn't seem to go down too badly, so we kept going back, visiting the wounded. I reckon we had about 6 or 7 of them convinced at one point.
6 or 7? Said Ron eagerly. Well, that's not bad. Are they going to come over here and start fighting you-know-who with us? But Hermione said,
What do you mean, at one point, Hagrid?
Hagrid looked at her sadly.
Gilgamesh's lot raided the caves. The ones that survived didn't want no more to do with us after that.
So there aren't any giants coming? Said Ron, looking disappointed.
No, said Hagrid,
heaving a deep sigh as he turned over his steak again and applied the cooler side to his face.
But we did what we meant to do. We gave them Dumbledore's message, and some of them heard it, and I expect some of them remember it. Just maybe them that don't want to stay around Gilgameth will move out of the mountains, and there's got to be a chance they'll remember Dumbledore's friendly to 'em. Could be they'll come.
Snow was filling up the window now. Harry became aware that the knees of his robes were soaked through. Fang was drooling with his head in Harry's lap.
Hagrid,
said Hermione quietly after a while.
Was there any sign of, did you hear anything about your mother while you were there?
Hagrid's unobscured eye rested upon her, and Hermione looked rather scared.
I'm sorry, I forget it.
Dead,
Hagrid grunted.
Died years ago. They told me.
Oh, I'm really sorry,
said Hermione in a very small voice. Hagrid shrugged his massive shoulders.
No need,
he said shortly.
Can't remember her much. Wasn't a great mother.
They were silent again. Hermione glanced nervously at Harry and Ron, plainly wanting them to speak. But you still haven't explained how you got in this state, Hagrid, Ron said, gesturing toward Hagrid's blood-stained face. Or why you're back so late, said Harry. Sirius says Madame Maxime got back ages ago. "Who attacked you?" said Ron.
"I haven't been attacked," said Hagrid emphatically.
But the rest of his words were drowned in a sudden outbreak of rapping on the door. Hermione gasped. Her mug slipped through her fingers and smashed on the floor. Fang yelped. All four of them stared at the window beside the doorway. The shadow of somebody small and squat rippled across the thin curtain.
"It's her,"
Ron whispered. "Get under here," Harry said quickly, seizing the invisibility cloak. He whirled it over himself and Hermione while Ron tore around the table and dived beneath the cloak as well. Huddled together, they backed away into a corner. Fang was barking madly at the door. Hagrid looked thoroughly confused. "Hagrid, hide our mugs!" Hagrid seized Harry and Ron's mugs and shoved them under the cushion in Fang's basket. Fang was now leaping up at the door. Hagrid pushed him out of the way with his foot and pulled it open. Professor Umbridge was standing in the doorway, wearing her green tweed cloak and a matching hat with ear flaps. Lips pursed, she leaned back so as to see Hagrid's face. She barely reached his navel.
"So,"
she said slowly and loudly, as though speaking to somebody deaf,
"you're Hagrid, are you?"
Without waiting for an answer, she strolled into the room, her bulging eyes rolling in every direction.
"Get away,"
she snapped, waving her handbag at Fang, who had bounded up to her and was attempting to lick her face.
I don't want to be rude," said Hagrid, staring at her, "but who the ruddy hell are you?" "My name is Dolores Umbridge."
Her eyes were sweeping the cabin. Twice they stared directly into the corner where Harry stood, sandwiched between Ron and Hermione.
"Dolores Umbridge?"
Hagrid said, sounding thoroughly confused.
"I thought you were one of their ministry. Don't you work with Fudge?" "I was senior undersecretary to the minister, yes,"
said Umbridge, now pacing around the cabin, taking in every tiny detail within, from the haversack against the wall to the abandoned traveling cloak.
"I am now the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher."
"Yes, brave of you," said Hagrid. "There's not many to take that job anymore."
"And Hogwarts High Inquisitor,"
said Umbridge, giving no sign that she had heard him.
"What's that?"
said Hagrid, frowning.
"Precisely what I was going to ask,"
said Umbridge, pointing at the broken shards of china on the floor that had been Hermione's mug. "Oh," said Hagrid, with a most unhelpful glance toward the corner where Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood hidden.
"Oh, that was Fang. He broke a mug, so I had to use this one instead."
Hagrid pointed to the mug from which he had been drinking. One hand still clamped over the dragon stake pressed to his eye. Umbridge stood facing him now, taking in every detail of his appearance instead of the cabin's.
"I heard voices,"
she said quietly.
"I was talking to Fang,"
said Hagrid stoutly.
"And he was talking back to you?"
"Well, in a manner of speaking," said Hagrid, looking uncomfortable. "I sometimes say Fang's near enough human."
"There are 3 sets of footprints in the snow leading from the castle door to your cabin,"
said Umbridge sleekly. Hermione gasped. Harry clapped a hand over her mouth. Luckily, Fang was sniffing loudly around the hem of Professor Umbridge's robes, and she did not appear to have heard.
"Well, I only just got back,"
said Hagrid, waving an enormous hand at the haversack. "Maybe someone came to call earlier and I missed him."
"There are no footsteps leading away from your cabin door."
"Well, I don't know why that'd be," said Hagrid, tugging nervously at his beard and again glancing toward the corner where Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood, as though asking for help. Umbridge wheeled around and strode the length of the cabin, looking around carefully.